Hi kids, we're going to go over the transport of molecules across the cell membrane. So we need to remember our cell membrane is like the windows and the doors of our schools. Okay, so I put this picture here to remind you how it functioned when we made that school analogy. It lets things in and out of our school just like it does to our cell. So if you look down here, you need to remember we have two parts of our cell membrane. Okay, we call it a phospholipid bilayer. Let me go ahead and highlight this part. It's really important. The phospholipid bilayer tells you the biomolecule that makes up this cell membrane. And bi, we need to remember why that bi prefix is important. Bi means two. As you can see here, I have one layer of phospholipids and I have a second layer. That's why we call it a bilayer. Now, there are parts of this phospholipid bilayer that we need to talk about. So let's zoom in here just on a single lipid. I'll go ahead and put a box around just one single phospholipid. Now, if you look there, there are two parts. We have a red phosphate head, which I will put a little box around for you. This is our phosphate head. And we have two legs. I like to think of it like a person. One head, two tails, or two legs. Now, you have to remember that we are mostly made up of water. Our cells, our 37 trillion cells, live in a water bath. So I'm just going to remind us of that. I'm going to write H2O. Remember, this is on the extracellular side. That is the outside of the cell. And we have water on the intracellular side, which is the inside of our cell. Now, this might be a little misleading because right here, it looks like the cell membrane goes straight across. When in reality, we know a cell is kind of like a blob, a circle shape. So I'm going to go ahead and draw what a cell would actually looks like. So here's my cell, and I'm drawing here two layers because I have a lipid bilayer. So let me draw a little part of it. I have my phosphate heads here. I have one here. I have one here and here and so on. I have one here, 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 here. So those are my phosphate heads, which you see here also in red. Then I'll go ahead and draw the tails for you to see. I'm going to try to put them in the same color. So each phosphate head has also two tails attached to it. Now, sorry, my drawing's a little bad here, but you get the point. Now, we have to look at these two parts. I said I have water on the outside, water on the inside. Now, the only things touching my water are my phosphate heads up here and down here at the bottom. So we call my phosphate heads, we call them water loving. They are hydrophilic. They love water. Now on the opposite side, we have my tails right here. You can better see in this picture that they're in the middle. So they never touch the water. So we call these guys hydrophobic or water fearing. That should make sense because you've all heard of the word phobia. When you have a phobia of something, it's to have a fear of it. So two parts of our one phospholipid here in blue is our head, hydrophilic, it loves water, and our tail is hydrophobic, it fears water. Again, we just went over this. All you guys really need to get out of this slide more is that we're teaching you some synonyms. I'll go ahead and highlight the synonyms that match each other in the same color. Remember, a synonym is words, different words that have the same meaning. So we said hydrophilic means water loving, and another way to say that is polar. Three words mean the same thing. Down here, I have it again. Hydrophobic, same as water fearing, same as non-polar. Just three synonyms for each of these different words here. All right, so why is the cell membrane important? I've kind of already hit on the point that it transports molecules in and out, but we have a new word here that might not be familiar, is homeostasis. Okay? I don't want you to get too confused on this. Let me draw you in a picture what homeostasis really means. We've all seen this seesaw. It has this in the middle. It looks like this. You stand on one side, then it'll go down. You stand over here, that side will go down. So the whole point of a seesaw game is so it can balance. That is literally what homeostasis means. Balance in our organism as a whole and balance in one tiny little cell. So what is homeostasis? Let's just recap on that. I already said it's balance, but what does that really mean? Okay, so when I'm keeping balance right here, that means I'm keeping constant internal conditions. We can break that down a little further if we don't know that vocab. The word constant just means the same. And the word internal is inside. So all this balance means is I'm keeping the same conditions inside my body and my cell. Okay? I'll give us some examples of this. What is homeostasis? One example in our body is balancing our temperature. When we get too hot, to release that heat and bring back our temperature, we are going to sweat. Opposite balance end, when we get too cold, we're going to shiver to bring back up our temperature. Same with the seesaw. All we're doing here is balancing temperature in our body. Okay, there are a couple other examples. I already said this seesaw right here. This was the heat, and the same thing actually happens with our eye. Your eyes only want to let in a certain amount of light. So when it gets bright, way too bright outside, we can't get all that light in our eyes. It's not good for us. So your pupils here are going to get smaller and they'll dilate to adjust and balance the amount of light that's actually going to go in our eyes. So that was homeostasis to an organism. Let's look closer at a cell. So homeostasis to one cell is called equilibrium. Okay, this fancy word, let's just think about what equilibrium sounds like. It sounds a lot like the word we know, equal. We all know what equal means, just the same. So equilibrium, equal. Check out this picture right here. What is the relative number of molecules on each side? Is it higher on one side and lower on the other? No. If you take time to count all these, they're equal. They're the same on each side. That's the whole point of transport, guys. Our cells want to balance each other. They're happy when that happens. So molecules are going to transport back and forth across my membrane until I reach this equalness or equilibrium. That point, I've maintained balance or homeostasis in my cell. All right. The cell membrane, I just said things are transporting in and out of it. Now it's like our security guard, our windows and our doors. They're not going to let everything in, but they're not going to let nothing in. We said, some things in. We have a fancy word for that. It is semi-permeable. Okay? This you guys can probably figure out this meaning on your own. We've all heard of a semicircle, right? Just half of a circle. So semi means half. Permeable means able to pass. So we put it together. The cell membrane, half of the stuff can pass, or some of the stuff can pass through. Okay, another way to say semi-permeable, kind of a synonym again, is selective, right? It selects what goes through. Not everything, but it'll select some things to go through. So let's go through what, if you weren't kind of getting that, let's go through some visuals of what selectivity or semi-permeable really means. So here I have a brick wall. Will anything go through this brick wall? No, of course not. We say this is not permeable. Nothing can pass. What about this window? Pretty wide open. Will everything pass? I think so. We're going to call this fully permeable or permeable. So now if we had to go somewhere in the middle, something that is semi-permeable that we see in real life. I'll give you one example. I think of a screen door. That is semi-permeable. Only some stuff can go through. For example, water and air. The whole point of this screen door is to stop the insects or the bugs. So some of this stuff, like our cell membrane, is getting through. I hope this makes a little more sense. Another real life example of something that is semi-permeable is a fence, right? Especially if you have a fence up in your backyard. Maybe it stops your animals from going through, but insects or little animals can still get through. So this is where we get into the meat and potatoes of our cell membrane. How do things cross this organelle? We have two ways that we're going to do that. Things that cross passively. Okay, this is another vocab word that we might have heard before, not in science. When you're doing something passive, like sleeping, you're not using energy. So thinking back to our cell membrane, it's all lipids stacked really, really close next to each other. So what can get through on its own? Small molecules, can they squeeze their way through? Or will very large molecules be able to fit through? So passive transport, no energy. Let's see what can go through without energy. We have nonpolar molecules. If you flip back a couple slides, we know two more synonyms for nonpolar molecules. And then, this one's more intuitive, small molecules like water can squeeze their way through. Now we have something that is opposite than passive, that does require energy. If I'm running, my activity is now not passive, it is active. Active, obviously that requires energy. Any activity requires energy. So now, this should be intuitive. Well, the things that were passive and didn't need energy, the opposite things are going to require energy. So the opposite of nonpolar is polar. The opposite of small is large. So these right here, we have two things that can go through passively, no energy. And we have two opposite things that are going to be active. They're going to take a lot of energy to get through my cell membrane.